Mark Thompson walked slowly along the cracked Arizona highway, the desert sun sinking behind him like a giant tired ember. His boots dragged through the dust, each step heavier than the last. He had always been a man who tried his best, but lately life had felt like an uphill battle. His little sister's birthday was tomorrow, and he had promised her a Barbie doll, the one she had been talking about for weeks. But with bills, repairs, and work hours being cut, he simply couldn't afford it. All he carried now was a tiny, inexpensive trinket that made him feel like a failure. As he stepped off the road to take a shortcut through the desert brush, the weight of disappointment pressed down even harder. Mark tried to shake it off, reminding himself that life was unpredictable and he could only do what he could. But inside, he wished things were different. He wished he could give his sister the world. The desert around him was silent, painted in fading orange light, and for a moment he felt completely alone, swallowed by the vastness of it all. Then something unusual broke the stillness. Near a fallen mesquite tree, he noticed the faintest movement, small, weak, barely noticeable. At first he thought it was an animal struggling in the sand, but as he got closer, the truth hit him like a blow to the chest. A young Apache child lay curled in the dirt, thin as a shadow, trembling from cold and hunger. His eyes were half open, unfocused, and filled with exhaustion that no child should ever experience. Mark felt panic rise inside him, mixed with disbelief that someone so small could be left alone in such harsh conditions. Reacting instinctively, Mark stripped off his own jacket and wrapped it gently around the boy's fragile body. The child didn't speak, only shivered softly as Mark lifted him into his arms. His skin felt icy despite the warm desert air. Mark's mind raced with questions. Where were the child's parents? How long had he been out here? Why had no one found him? But there was no time to think. He tightened his grip on the boy and hurried toward his cabin, every step driven by a sudden, fierce protectiveness he didn't fully understand. Inside the cabin, Mark placed the child near the fire, warming him slowly to avoid shock. He prepared soup, water, and blankets, doing everything he could with the little resources he had. The boy ate cautiously, like someone who hadn't felt safe in a long time. Mark didn't ask questions, he knew the child wasn't ready. Instead, he watched him carefully, listening to the desert wind howl outside the wooden walls. Something about the moment felt surreal, like fate had placed this child in his path for a reason he couldn't yet see. That night, Mark stayed awake long after the fire dimmed. The boy slept fitfully, mumbling in a language Mark didn't understand. Every sound made Mark more aware of the responsibility he had taken on. He couldn't help wondering what dangers the child had escaped, or what dangers might still be looking for him. As the moon climbed over the silent desert, Mark realized that bringing the boy home had changed more than just his night. His life had shifted in a way he couldn't fully grasp yet. And somewhere deep inside, he sensed that this was only the beginning of a much larger story. The boy's condition improved slowly, and each small change filled the cabin with a warmth Mark hadn't realized he needed. The child began eating with more confidence, his cheeks gaining color, his eyes lifting with shy curiosity. Sometimes he reached out to tug Mark's sleeve, other times he simply sat close, as if afraid the safety around him might disappear. Mark found himself adjusting to the presence of another heartbeat in his quiet life. He boiled simple meals, checked the child's temperature, and kept the fire steady at night. A bond formed, unexpected, gentle, and deeper than either of them understood. By the fourth morning, the routine had become familiar. Mark woke early, started coffee, and watched the sunrise paint the desert in pink and gold. The boy sat wrapped in a blanket, silent but peaceful, his small hands holding onto the cup Mark had given him. The desert around the cabin felt calm and still, almost too quiet. Mark thought about notifying the authorities, but something held him back. The boy was still fragile, still anxious at sudden noises, still clinging to Mark's arm when he tried to step outside. Mark decided to wait, just one more day. Then the knock came, sharp, heavy, echoing through the quiet wooden walls like a distant thunderclap. Mark froze mid-step, the cup in his hand trembling slightly. The boy's eyes widened, fear returning instantly as he curled into himself. Mark placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder before walking slowly toward the door. His instincts tightened, alert, prepared for something he couldn't explain. When he pulled the door open, the sight before him made his breath stop short, as if the desert itself had shifted into another world. Standing outside were three Apache women, each wearing traditional clothing adorned with beadwork that shimmered in the rising sun. Their faces were solemn, but layered with emotions, relief, fear, exhaustion, and something older, deeper, carved by generations of history. The woman in the center stood slightly ahead of the others. Her silver hair was braided tightly, her dark eyes focused, steady, and wise. She did not hesitate. She looked directly at Mark, then past him into the cabin, and her voice emerged low and steady. We have come, for the child. The words hit Mark harder than he expected. They were not demanding, not aggressive, but filled with a weight that rooted him to the doorway. Behind him, he felt the boy move closer, clutching the fabric of his shirt. Mark's chest tightened with a mix of protectiveness and uncertainty. He stepped slightly to the side, unsure of what to say, unsure whether handing over the child was the right thing, or the only thing. The woman's expression softened, and Mark sensed a silent story behind her eyes, one he had yet to understand but was now caught in the middle of. In that moment, Mark realized this wasn't merely a matter of returning a lost child. It was something far more significant. This boy belonged to a community with history, traditions, and struggles Mark had never imagined. These women hadn't just come to retrieve someone, they had come carrying the weight of ancestry, responsibility, and hope. By saving the boy, Mark had stepped into a living story much larger than himself. And though he didn't know what would happen next, one thing was clear: his life had quietly shifted in a direction he could never step back from. The real story, his story with them, was only beginning.